Friend Shabbat Shalom again to everyone. I have just returned from Israel and I'm a little bit jet lagged, but I am still delighted to be able to share with you some words of Torah this evening. What is spirituality? People use the term, but it's often not easy to define. One way of understanding spirituality is the search in our lives for meaning that comes from beyond us, something, an added dimension of our own reality and experience. And people who pursue spirituality, this pursuit of religious meaning, direction, discipline, often use the term spiritual practice as the kind of practical way to pursue that spirituality. People have all kinds of spiritual practices. Some fast once a week or multiple times during the week. There is meditation, there is yoga, there is chanting. There are periods of silence. Some people even make exercise into some form of spiritual practice. Judaism has a ready-made system of spiritual practice. The system is called mitzvot, values, value actions, things that are rooted in a certain belief but are translated into something very specific in how we are to act. Things that we do or should not do, in order to create a feeling of completeness and closeness to the source of all life. As we know, there are positive commandments in the Torah and there are negative commandments. There are things that we are told we should do and things we're told we shouldn't do. One of the major areas of spiritual practice in Judaism has to do with food. We Jews eat uniquely. We have many food customs that are unique to us. For example, challah on Shabbat, matzah on Passover, apples and honey for Rosh Hashanah, jelly donuts for Hanukkah, hamantashen for Purim, dairy products for Shavuot. It's all related to certain messages and meaning. To honor Shiva, people are supposed to bring food to comfort the family. Of course, food deprivation, Yom Kippur. We have meals of celebration after all mitzvot. Jane and I have a new grandson, Shaya. He was born in Israel on July 20th, and we celebrated his bris on July 27th. And the moil, the ritual circumciser, is important, but the meal of celebration is just as important. Shabbat services without food after it seems one-dimensional and naked. Now, this week's Torah portion is foundational to our spiritual practice. And I don't believe that in my 10 years at the New Reform Temple that I've ever spoken about Deuteronomy chapter 14. Deuteronomy chapter 14 tells us what animals, fish, and birds Jews can or cannot eat according to tradition. Some animals, as we know, are permitted. The ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer. Animals with cleft hoofs and which chew their cud. A giraffe is kosher, a pig is not. Fish with fins and scales are permitted, thus shellfish is forbidden. Certain birds cannot be eaten, most of them being scavengers. That is the essence of chapter 14 of the book of Deuteronomy. And then we have articulated one of the most important of the food spiritual practices. We are instructed not to boil a young goat, in its mother's milk, an injunction that became the basis for the rabbinic separation between milk and meat. There is absolutely no health reason given in the Torah for any of the dietary laws. The Torah does give us a reason for all these laws. They are a path to piety. They are spiritual practice. It says in Deuteronomy 14, verse 21, "For you are a people consecrated to your God, Adonai." The laws, the kashrut laws, the laws of keeping kosher, are about holiness, not public health. Classical Reform Judaism rejected the dietary laws for two very specific reasons. First, they created social separation from non-Jews. If you cannot eat a meal with someone, it creates boundaries and separation. If eating barbecue is part of the culture and you don't do it, it has social, even economic implications. And second, Classical Reform Judaism in 1885 wanted to move away from all these ritual dimensions of Judaism. And I quote, they claimed that they were from another age and no longer spiritually elevating. So that's the background. I can only speak personally. I want to share with you how I look at it, with the notion that I think you should understand what the rabbi of the New Reform Temple thinks about these things. And I'm not preaching about what other people should do. I want to explain to you what I do and why it's meaningful to me. Based on my own understanding of the kind of Jew I want to be, I am a traditionalist when it comes to kashrut, the kosher laws. For me, there is nothing more fundamental in my daily existence than eating. Eating is part of who I am. What I eat defines me. We talk a lot about eating. I do. We have strong feelings, likes and dislikes, allergies, family recipes, our favorite restaurants. So here is how I see the laws of kashrut in my own religious identity. First, it's part of Jewish history, of Jewish continuity. The dietary laws connect me with the earliest history of my people. Keeping them has been a major focus of Jewish tradition from the very beginning of the Bible and of certainly the time of the rabbis. And we have to remember, one of the reasons for the story of Hanukkah itself was that the Greeks forbade the practice of the dietary laws of the Jews who lived at that time. Second, they have a family resonance with me. Keeping kosher was something that was part of my family. Even when my mother did not keep a strictly kosher home, certain foods were just not served, and certainly not served together. Third, the kashrut laws create for me a sense of community. Traditions and institutions must be created to maintain them. This creates a sense of Jewish cohesiveness and connection. And fourth, I find N-O of kashrut to be extremely important. Kashrut forces me to learn the value of saying no. Our Judaism demands of us to understand that we often need to say no. No! And our ability to say no in the most mundane parts of our lives has implications for everything. It's good to learn to say no. It is one of the foundations of a moral life. And fifth, the way I eat is a way for me to articulate my values. Now, let me give you a kind of maybe crazy example, but it's the one that I think will be the clearest in trying to understand where I'm going in my own spiritual life. Why do I choose not to eat a cheeseburger? I hear they're very good. Are they good? I don't know. I mean, I hear they're great, and McDonald's must think they're great because they're doing very well with them. Here is why I choose not to do so. Originally, we were vegetarians. The Garden of Eden did not have a McDonald's. Human beings are omnivorous. At times we seek meat, although it's not necessary for our survival. And there are 4 basic laws about eating meat in Judaism. Only certain animals may be eaten, so that killing is not indiscriminate. And the animal is killed in the most painless way. All blood must be removed because blood symbolizes life, and all life belongs to God. You may eat the animal, but you must not imagine yourself to be the master of life and death. Foods made from milk and foods made from meat must be prepared, served, and eaten separately, because meat symbolizes the taking of life and milk symbolizes the giving of life, and the two must never be confused in our lives. So therefore, from a spiritual, moral point of view, kashrut is a moral compromise. Eat meat, but do it with ethical sensitivity. If all of us stop eating cheeseburgers and chicken parmesan, the world perhaps will not be transformed. But on an individual level, it's a statement about my values, about violence, about my relationship with other creatures in the world, about the ideal state of the world, about discipline and choice. I find it to be quite an effective spiritual practice. I share this glimpse of my own spiritual practice not to convince you to do one thing or another. That's not my job. My job is to teach a Reformed Jewish approach to Jewish practice. And here is what I think it is. To be a Reformed Jew is to be a thoughtful Jew, taking all traditions in Judaism seriously, understanding them, respecting them even if they are not something that we choose to do. That to me is the goal of Reformed Judaism. To look at the entirety of our tradition, even Deuteronomy chapter 14, and to ask ourselves, what does it mean? What is its history? What is its implications? How do people bring it into their lives? Is it something that I personally would find compelling, or is it something that doesn't resonate with me? Not all things in Judaism must be done. That's the reality of modern Jewish life, not just for Reformed Jews, but for all Jews. No one can do everything in Jewish tradition. But everything in Judaism is worth our serious reflection, our serious exploration, to honor the glory of our tradition, even when we can't make it personally part of our lives. I think that's the glory of being a Jew today, receiving this wonderful tradition and using our thoughtfulness and our insight and our own ability to make decisions and distinctions and choices to create a spiritual practice that is compelling to us and that connects us to the Spirit of God in our lives. I pray that's something that all of us can do in the various paths that we take towards being authentic Jews for ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.